Okay, Katie, we're here to have an amazing conversation because when I met you, I was really blown away, not only by the depth of your intuitive power and ability, but also just really what you stand for, especially when it comes to women's health. So I'm really excited to have you on and to introduce your work to the Fearlessly Fertile community. So why don't you start us off with sharing a little bit about what a medical intuitive is and how you got into this work?
Certainly. So, in a nutshell, everybody works a little bit differently, but um, I am able to tune in to people's energy, their what's going on in their mind, what's going on in their social lives and family, and their past and their career, and sometimes more than they want to know. Um, just using their name and age. That's all I purposely don't want to know anymore. And I work with people all over the world, so I get the name and age first, and then I create a 4-page report, as you went through this whole thing, right? And an intuitive soul painting, which is a symbolic way to get information from my guides, and send that to people before we meet. And then when we talk, I get a lot more information from my guides as well. And the main purpose, the overall purpose, because everybody has a different reason for contacting me, but the overall purpose I feel is to get to the root causes of things that are making people unhealthy or unhappy, to point out strengths, to help people use those strengths, to help connect to intuition, and mostly to help empower people. Because so many of us, especially women, don't feel empowered, especially people going through fertility journeys. It's so scary, and they're so dependent on what the medical system is telling them, which is pretty disconcerting sometimes.
Yeah, and often grim.
I know, and it doesn't have to be, you know. And then, so moi, I've always been really intuitive. Always just kind of felt energy around me. Didn't know I was talking to dead people or guides when I was really little, but that is what was happening. I remember distinctly one time I was 3, my parents were fighting about eggs, and looking up at them, and a voice came into my head loud and clear that said, "They are unequipped to raise you, and you're on your own, and we're here to help you." So I kind of was like, okay, excellent. But always just, was an observer and just saw a lot of dysfunctional things and stuff. And so as a result of being bullied, because I went through puberty earlier than other people and the dysfunctional family, I developed a pretty severe eating disorder. I was bulimic. Almost took my own life. It was, I had a plan and everything. I just couldn't live that way anymore. I was throwing up 3 times a day, and the stories on my book and all that kind of stuff. But it was a really positive thing that ended up happening, because I got myself into therapy with a Jungian psychologist. So it was a very spiritual approach. She helped me to connect to my intuition, to love and accept myself, to basically look at things symbolically. If I had gone to somebody who just did behavior mod or had gone into treatment, I know I wouldn't have done well. I needed that spiritual approach. So that is what I have taken forward. A licensed counselor for 35 years, as well as a medical intuitive. And all the stuff that helped me really, really worked. And so I fully believe that I was meant to go through all that to pass it on.
I love that. It's so funny how so often our own story informs how we serve later. It's really, it gives us the sort of street cred of having actually lived it and to navigate it, that we're able to share with people, hey, try it this way. Let me help you in this way, from a knowing place, not just a theoretical place.
Right.
So What about, I'd love it if you would share a little bit more, because so many women come to me super curious about intuition and understanding that, because when we put the words medical, intuitive together, like for some people, it can be really hard to even distinguish what that means together. So let's talk about the intuition first, and then we'll talk about the medical part.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And it really is not just medical, but I like to call myself like a medical and emotional intuitive, because it's physical, emotional, and spiritual.
Yes.
All of it. You have to look at all of it. It's not just, I mean, I'm not a doctor. I can't legally diagnose anybody, and nobody doing this work should be doing that. But I will do things like identify symptoms, traits, things in the body. I can look inside the body and see weird things, stuff like that. And I can say things like, this may be a possible diagnosis, but I then work with a lot of natural practitioners, licensed natural practitioners, and I can refer people to them to get more information and get officially diagnosed and things like that. So I'm very above board when it comes to all that. But that's it's a really good point, because it's intuition, as I see it, is a connection to unconditional love and acceptance. This is what I was taught. This is what worked for me. This is what I still use. So it's a connection to unconditional love that we all have access to. It's whenever anyone says that this kind of work is evil or spooky or anything like that, it is so the opposite. And it's just a connection to your own love and love in the universe and God and all the loving things. And it's like having a bodyguard with you all the time. Somebody who knows everything about you and loves you anyway. There's no judgment, right? Somebody who can help you make decisions. We often feel so alone and so like, am I doing the right thing? There's so much second guessing, and then we guess or doubt our intuition and ourselves. So it's like having a best friend with you all the time.
That's so good. I love that. I mean, I love that description. It's so, I remember when you shared that with me, I was just so blown away that our intuition is an inherent part of us. It's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, it blows my mind that anyone would consider connecting to your intuition evil. I mean, I think if there's anything evil, it's whatever separates us from that internal knowing, and
Right.
thereby, hobbling people from this deep inward connection that we can have that helps us make great choices for ourselves.
There's a lot of people who are threatened by things like intuition, because if we're listening to our inner knowing, we can't listen to them. They can't influence us, any powers that be or whatever. And one of the things that I love about this is the more connected we are to intuition, the more we get what we need from that. So what other people are doing and saying is far less important.
Imagine that people become their own authority, Katie.
Yeah. Exactly. In a non-threatening, non-judgmental way.
Yeah. And I think, it was funny because when I met you, and I was so blown away by the thoroughness of the report that you did. Because, the whole reason why I reached out is I'm like, yeah, I want to know, there's some things on my mind about, like, as I just entered my 50s, and I'm like, there's more that I want to know about me. Like, who am I in this stage in my life? And, how can I be better for me? What are the things I need to be aware of? And those kinds of questions are the kinds of questions that I invite women to ask on their fertility journey all the time, because all it is you're being presented with a set of circumstances.
Right.
So one of the smartest things is to become curious about them as opposed to frightened by them. And I think in your work, like it's such a beautiful thing, because you ask a lot of, when you're in the session, you're asking questions and sharing ideas. Like, it's nothing spooky other than how accurate you were.
Thank you. Fertility is one of the things that I really love to work with people on, because often they come from a place of grief if they've
Mm.
tried and then lost babies, or gotten their hopes up so many times and spent tons of money and all the things, and then there's the biological clock that brings us into a place of fear. And then it's like, well, what else? Maybe there's other things wrong with me that are, somehow hurting me in some way. Or so I love to look at the physical, emotional, and spiritual. And I want to give people a lot of hope, because so often in my practice, people will come to me with fertility problems and we will discover something, more than one thing, but things that, if not rectified before getting pregnant, they could lead to harm to the mom or the baby, or difficult pregnancy, or things like that. And I can give a really easy example. And one of those things is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a hypermobility disorder that affects the entire body. It's really crazy. I pick it up all the time. I have it. My daughter has it. It's grossly undiagnosed, and it can impact fertility. So when you are pregnant, your ligaments and things loosen. It just affects everything. So pregnancy can bring on much more severe effects. And if you are prepared for that, like with pelvic floor work, with PT, with nutritional things, with just so many millions of things, if you're prepared for that, you can prevent future damage, down the road. And also it's good to know, because it's a genetic disorder. So it's good to know that about maybe your kids, might have this, and you want to know what to look for, because the earlier you treat it, the better. And things like people being afraid that they'll end up parenting like the family they came from. Or unresolved issues within the external family. So things, I've had people be like, I hate my mother-in-law so much, and I don't like my mother any better. And I am really afraid of bringing a child, especially a girl, into this world, and how they're going to impact me, because I haven't set up great boundaries yet. But not even really aware of it, like sort of aware of it, but not realizing, so empowerment is really important. And just so many little things that aren't so little, that come into play.
Yeah, it's really fascinating that you are raising that, because I remember I had a not you, but 1,000 years ago, when I was on my journey, and it became clear to me that there was this psycho-spiritual aspect to it. Which, back when I was a prosecutor, Katie, the whole idea,
I love it,
that there was something psycho-spiritual about any of this seemed like hogwash to me. But that also explains why I was getting the result that I was getting. There were so many things that, the belief I had was that we are just meat suits. If they put enough drugs into me, that my uterus would behave, my ovaries would behave, and I wouldn't have to do any work on myself whatsoever. It's hilarious today, but it's also wildly ignorant, and really demonstrates how I think we as women have been detached from our own femininity, from our bodies, and we kind of think in that way. Is that something that you come across as well?
Oh my God, all the time. It's almost impossible to feel the signals and the messages from your body if you're dissociated from it.
Yeah.
And if you don't like yourself physically or emotionally or whatever, the tendency, or if you've been a victim of abuse or any of those things, the tendency, or the kind of coping mechanism, is to become detached from our bodies so that we don't feel as much pain. And unfortunately, it makes us feel more pain, because you don't have, you lose any intuitive connection. So you feel alone. You feel like you can't trust yourself. You end up emotionally eating, for example, or doing other addictive behaviors to try to get you back to some sort of feeling. And it doesn't work. It just makes things so much worse.
Yeah, and I think that it's time that, women really wake up to this reality that you're not going to out supplement or out breathe or out, medicate the pain
Right.
that you may be feeling from either past trauma, relationship issues, lack of boundaries, like all of these things that we're talking about. And I love what you do in the sense is really help women become aware of it.
Yes,
Because a lot of us are just running around numb, Katie.
it's so true. And also, like when I was in my recovery from bulimia, I had to accept some really crappy things about myself.
Mm.
And like that, I was being narcissistic, not because I was a horrible person, but the nature of eating disorders and depression are that all you're thinking about is what you weigh, what you eat, what you look like. Is somebody watching you eat? Is somebody, it's all about you. And it didn't mean I'm a bad person, but the reality was that needed to change, you know? And so the more I was able to be honest with myself, I could do it in a loving way and then admit more stuff that I could work on. And we just spend so much time pushing down our imperfections because we think that if people see them, they won't like us and they won't love
Mm.
us, not realizing that everybody has them.
That's so true. I mean, so let's talk about how that manifests physically, because I think that one of the things is kind of I was alluding to earlier is we feel like there's this disconnection between what we believe about ourselves and how that shows up in our bodies, because you can't separate physiologically your thoughts and the way that you see yourself, you see whatever your fertility journey or other things. You can't separate that from having an impact physiologically on your body.
Right, right, right. Well, something I see just universally, and it's not necessarily just one type of illness or accident or whatever, right? Is a lot of, especially women, but also men, walking around taking care of everybody else, thinking that that's how they get their love and their identity, right? And not allowing themselves to make themselves a priority or, take time to go like work out or go to a spa or whatever the hell it is. It could be just taking a dumb walk, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. And so if you think about what getting sick does and getting into an accident does, or having an accident, it forces you to stop what you are doing. It forces you to maybe lay in bed, to take a rest, to put your health, including mental health, first, because if you don't, you might literally die. So it's also a pretty cool excuse to be able to say no to something you don't want to do, or to an event you don't want to go to, or someone's house. Like COVID was so amazing for a lot of people because they had an excuse to not go to family gatherings with people they didn't really like. Okay. So it's about learning to use your voice to allow your feelings, to be honest with yourself about how you're feeling, and to not need something bad to happen to our bodies to force us into waking the hell up.
Mm, So well said. Because, when I look back on my fertility journey, and I tell women this all the time, nobody believes me, Katie, when I say that. But I tell people that my fertility journey literally changed my life. It saved my life
Mm-hmm,
in a
mm-hmm.
lot of ways. Because if I had just kept going, if my son Asher came to me when I initially called him, I shudder to think of the mother I would be.
Wow.
Like, it's like it goes exactly to what you're saying here, is that my body was basically begging me. I mean, I was a trial attorney at the time, working insane hours. I had no boundaries, like at all. But it wasn't until this journey that I even considered spirituality, that I actually
Mm-hmm,
considered my health in a holistic way, that I
mm-hmm.
even considered what I was eating. Like it literally, I mean, it put me on a track to getting back into a place where I could actually embrace what health really is.
It's so true. I hear this all the time. If it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have started to look into intuition or more meaning to life. There's got to be more than this, or the fact that traditional healthcare can help, but often it doesn't. And it's a rabbit hole, and looking into all these things that people never thought they'd even be open to, or once thought were awful, or leads them to contact me. And we figure out all of these things. And like the number of people who come who may have Lyme disease, for example, right? Or something like that. And I detect it, can't diagnose, but then send them off to get diagnosed. And that can be passed to your child in utero and can be passed to your partner. So like so many things that, this, like I said, this is kind of silly, but it's not when you're 16. It meant the world to me to be a varsity cheerleader. And I was really good at it and all this other crap. And I remember the last audition I was going to do, I finally did it. And for whatever reason, I didn't make it. I was devastated. And that led to even more bulimia, because then I was like, well, screw it. I don't have to, be healthy. And I was all like upset at myself. But that horrible thing at the time when you're 16 years old had to happen because it took me down to rock bottom.
Mm.
And it's, seemingly a dumb thing, but it's so not a dumb thing.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No, I mean, it's all these pivot points in our lives.
Yeah.
And I love that about your work, because you're so thorough, really looking at the whole person and really pointing out different things that you become aware of in the process. And it's like, and I think it's often people who have experienced this kind of pain that we can detect it in other people really easily. And you said something to me that really made an impression. I remember you found in me a level like being empathic. I was like trying to think of, like, it wasn't just empathy. It was a level of awareness,
Mm-hmm.
an emotional awareness. And I found that really fascinating. And so that shows me that not only are you picking up on, things that may be going on with people's health, you really are reading them.
Oh yeah.
Emotionally. And very rarely do we run into people that can see us in that way.
Yeah. And I'm very honest. I'm also very cautious about what I put in reports and things. I don't know, who's going to see them, and introduce things in a delicate way. Especially, I have people who the reports detect things I've never told anybody. So, or my guides detect that, and then they tell me things too. And so I'm being a licensed counselor really does help with all that, but I'm really respectful and gentle with people while I'm being honest, because people want honesty. There was something else I was going to say about that, but I don't remember what it was. So
yeah, I just found that ability to be, I mean, because we're talking about whole health. So,
right.
You're going to get a quote unquote diagnosis from traditional Western medicine, but all of these different modalities, like, connecting with your work and that intuitive work is another piece of the puzzle.
It is.
It's another way of knowing yourself at a level that an algorithm on somebody's computer is not going to know you. It's like it's very easy to feel something other than human when you're going through the process of fertility, because it's all statistics. It's so much of that I think that we lose the humanity in it.
So true. It's so true. And even just like, I wanted to say something about trusting intuition, because that all goes with it. Now, if you think about the center of fertility, it's our uterus area, second chakra, and that has to do with female power and energy, male power and energy, the balance between male and female, creativity. That's where we create things as the woman. So there's all these other things, like people who haven't been creative in years and then are afraid of it, and then they need to create in other ways. So that'll help them create life and all that good stuff. But people are often really afraid to connect to their intuition because it will tell them things that they're afraid of, or tell them honest things. Like, for example, we all hear our intuition. And I work with so many people who are in really crappy relationships, unhappy relationships, jobs they hate, whatever. And their intuition has been telling them, like, this is making you sick, or this is making you unhappy, or you have to get out. But that can be overwhelming, and it doesn't happen overnight. Right. So I like to tell people, start by just listening to whatever information you get. There's a lot of techniques in my book that saved my life. Start by just listening. You don't have to do it. Don't judge it. Don't be like, yes, no, imperfect. Where is this information coming from? Is it really my intuition? Just go with what you hear. And then you can decide, you know what? This feels really scary or overwhelming to me. So go from there, explore why, like take it in stages. And then you may also decide, hey, I just heard that I need to leave my husband, but this isn't happening tomorrow. And this is really scary. So hold that thought. I'm going to check in with you in a couple of days, my intuition, and we'll explore this more, but you don't have to feel like your intuition is taking control of you.
You know what? I love that, because a lot of people take this in a very like, okay, so I got this intuitive hit and I've got to burn it all down.
Right,
and it's
right.
No, like, no, we don't have to do all that. Right.
Exactly.
Well, and what do you think it's because people are afraid of change, that they're afraid of their intuition? Like, do you think it could be some of that? Because like, I'm thinking, as I become more and more connected to mine, I'm like, man, this intuition is really freaking convenient, right? Because you kind of have like, you're on this track and then you get this hit that, I need to go in this direction. But I think as over time, once you learn to trust it, then it's not inconvenient and it's not scary.
I really do think that. And as humans, because of a lot of different reasons, we have a tendency to need to be in control. Now, there's something to be said for that. However, then control becomes an obsession and it becomes a fear response. And again, there's reasons for that, but as a very determined, high achieving person, always has been, there are times when I can feel my little control freak self, getting out of control and like pushing for things that maybe shouldn't be happening, or my agenda is not happening, or my expectations, or whatever. So, and I've come a long way with this, but so the way that I like to think about stepping back and allowing intuition to come in is, you don't lose yourself. You don't lose control when you step back. You are simply allowing a loving force that's a part of you to come in and help you. So your intuition is your friend. It doesn't want to take over. You don't lose who you are. But when I can chill and allow that to happen, I get so many more ideas, and my intuition tells me the things I need to do. And like, instead of me feeling like I have to figure everything out, which is exhausting and doesn't work, it's a way of just opening yourself up rather than feeling like it's intuition or me. And that's not the way it works.
No, and it really feels like when you are tapped into your intuition and you get used to hearing it, that things come to you with more ease rather than being on the freaking struggle bus trying to figure it out. It's like it's already here.
Yes, exactly. And we all have it. And to answer your question about, I know we talked about medical intuition before, but real quickly, like, we all have that. And you have a child, right? So you're tuned into your child. You know when they have an ear infection before a doctor even does, or whatever. Like, you just know what's going on. And even with your own bodies, you get a stomach ache, right? You're bloated. You instantly start figuring out, was it something I ate? Do I need to lay down? Do I need to eat some crackers? Do I need to see a doctor? Like, what's going on? So all of that is using your medical intuition. So it's not, I mean, I take it to a woo-woo extent, but for most people.
But we love the woo here, Katie. We love the woo. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's, go for it. I mean, that's what you're doing is you're tuning into your body.
I love that. And I think it's really important for for women to hear that it's nothing to be afraid of, right? Everyone, when you're first exploring this, it's like, is it or is it not a tumor, right? It doesn't have to go to that place. It's like, no, it could be I need a nap. It could be I need more protein. It could be some of those things.
And also, again, fertility. You like, what if somebody has fibroids or endometriosis or, Ehlers-Danlos or something like that that's influencing PCOS, whatever. So there's this fear of there's something medically wrong with me and I can't have kids. Well, what if you look at it as, yeah, there's some medical stuff going on and I'm not going to be afraid of it, because if I'm afraid of it, I will never know and I can't get it treated. So it's this like doom and gloom. It's the going from, 0 to 100 instead of being in the present moment and like, okay, this right now is going on. It doesn't mean that in the future, whatever, or my past, but just kind of to be present. And intuition helps you to be present, not so afraid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also really interesting because what women have an opportunity to do here, connecting with you, connecting with your work, is that they can be more fully informed.
Yes.
And really look at a constellation of things, right? Because, somebody could tell you that your estrogen is too low. Well, what's that about? Or, what is that really connected to? Because otherwise, if you're just given a prescription, which may be warranted, that you're not really getting to the root cause, because that's what you are all about, is getting to the root cause. Right. Like, what's the actual thing?
And which estrogen? There were 4 of them.
Yeah. I mean, I just get blown away by it, because I think it's so much like, if we're really concerned about health, we want to be concerned about health on a holistic, level, as opposed to just looking at something we can slap a prescription on. Like,
I know,
because that really is overall health, because what women want is not just to get pregnant, it's to stay pregnant, it's to have a healthy baby and, make that transition into motherhood in a really healthy way, because now you have this little person that you're responsible for, that you do want to pay attention if that little one has an ear infection or whatever. I mean, and I think what you're saying too is really powerful for us as women, because as mothers, we can help our children become empowered in their own bodies. If they're raised by women who are connected to their bodies, trust their intuition, right, we can in turn teach our children to do the same.
Very much. Speaking of the little beings, if you want to get into woo-woo.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm also able to speak with babies who haven't been born yet, who are in utero, who may have passed, who it's the most fun thing. And I get so much cool information from them. That also helps with the fertility journey. And I can teach people how to talk to their babies too, who are coming in or, who may have passed or whatever. And it's something that I kind of discovered by accident, because somebody asked me to do it. And I'm like, okay, I guess so. Let's try this. And I'm so many accurate things. And it was so neat, found it after.
How is that different, Katie? I'm super curious. Or is it the same? Because I'm super curious about that.
I feel like it's all part of the same set of weird abilities. Like, I'm very blessed. I'm a medium. I'm clairvoyant. I'm clairaudient. I can, pick up things in the body. So I get it all. And I feel like it's kind of part of being a medium in a way. And also like connecting to people's guides too, because we all have guides. We have an army of them who are helping us, who want us to be happy. So it's kind of if you look at your little spirit baby or baby, whatever, as one of your guides, because and who knows if they were here before, who knows about reincarnation, but I tend to believe that. I think it's neat. And I've seen evidence of that. So if you look at them as a guide, as a helper, they want to be here with you. And I just feel like it's an extension of intuition and connecting to the other side.
It's so funny that you say that, because right before my son was conceived, I had a strong indication that he was coming. It was just this feeling. And Katie, it didn't make any sense because you know my story. Like, it did not make any freaking sense. But I remember saying to myself, I'm going to let him in.
Yes.
It was really weird. I mean, because I at that point I didn't have any indication I could get pregnant naturally. Like, after all of those failed treatments for all of those years, like, I had no idea where that came from, but it came through so loud and
I love it.
clear. And you know what? I had a virtually symptomless pregnancy. It was like the easiest pregnancy on the planet. Like,
Wow.
it was crazy.
I'm very jealous and happy for you at the same time.
But it was just so nuts. Like, we were constantly like, and that's why I love what you do so much, because it's all right there.
Yeah.
Like, if you're just willing to tune in and move the blocks, out of the way, do what you need to do to address them. Like, he was telling me the whole time.
I think that's fantastic. I really think that's so fantastic. And I do believe that, we make a choice before we come here to engage in whatever crazy it is that we engage in here or learn or, to me, that helps me to not be so stuck in the past or not to be so stuck in trauma or to kind of be more accepting and be like, that wasn't a fun experience, but maybe everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to.
Yeah. Well, and that also empowers us to get out of victimhood. And
Yes.
Instead of being a victim in our lives, we are an adventurer, we're an explorer. We can take this information that you empower us with and then decide what we want to do with it.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
So I would love it if you would share a little bit about your book, and then we'll finish up by you telling all of these women how they can find you, where they can find you, and how they can work with you.
Certainly. So my husband calls my book, it's called Heal from Within, a guidebook to intuitive wellness. He calls it Katie Beecher, the home game. And it tells my story, my backstory, a lot of things, teaches you how to connect to your intuition with specific techniques that changed my life that I still use. And it helps you kind of do a medical and spiritual intuitive reading on yourself. There's templates in there. There's a lot of visual charts. There's a lot of things. And also really deeply get into the physical, emotional, and spiritual meaning of your symptoms. So each chakra, which is an energy center in the body, has its own chapter. You get really deep into your symptoms, in those areas, how they connect to each other. And then there's like a lot of quizzes in terms of like identifying your stuff and what to work on first and things you may not have even realized are connected. And then the back section is kind of a list of different things and some, overall stuff about it and things that you can do to help. But I was told to write it when I was 16, when I was healing from the eating disorder. And they said, you need to pass all this on. That's why you're here. It took me till I was, I'm 59. So it took me till I was like 56 to start thinking about writing it because it was freaking scary. But, better late than never. So
what was scary about it, you think? Was it because you're really putting it out there? Like, what was that about?
It was self-doubt. It was because I don't consider myself a writer. I didn't know where to start. There were so many ideas in my head, which is the daily life of Katie, and that I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what was important and what wasn't important. I just had all of these things in the ADHD head of mine. And I really, thankfully, I had someone to help me write a proposal. And then the St. Martin's Press, they were really good about like kind of helping me break things down and edit. And because I've been doing this my whole life, basically. So it's, 59 years of stuff in there, and you don't know what people really want to hear about or not, and then perfectionism and all the great normal, human things get in the way. So yeah.
But that's why it's written with so much love. It's so real. And I love that you are really empowering people that read your book with, hey, these are some of the things you can do yourself. These are places where you can get started. You can become familiar with the topic. But as much as I love your book, and I'm going to encourage people to go get it like instantaneously, there's nothing like spending that time with you. I think that is one of the most powerful ways that you can just really get to the core, and really it's an act of self-love, I think, to spend time with you and to really that's how I felt. Like it was such a powerful experience. And the things that you taught me and the things that you showed me, which I'm not going to share here because people are going to have to read the book or be blessed by your presence in a session, that I just think it really got me thinking, and it really got me looking at myself in a different way, like as I move into another stage in my life. So I'm just so grateful for the work that you do. We're going to include a link to your website and all of the goodness. You're on Instagram. You're very active there, which is really cool. And I just really encourage all the women that are listening to check out your work and give themselves an opportunity to be blessed by it. So thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. And as you learned, we can do a lot in just one session.
Yeah.
You don't need like a million sessions. It's not I try to really shove as much into that hour as possible.
Oh, yeah. Well, and ladies, the painting that you got, it's like taking that to the next level. So I'm so excited. I am sure these women are going to blow you up, which is a good thing.
It is a good thing.
Yeah. And I'm so delighted. So thank you so much, Katie. Thank you for your kindness and your generosity here, and really sending women a message, especially for women on this journey, that they need to hear. Not only can they believe in themselves and have some expectation of good things on this journey, but that once they tap into their intuition, they can be on a path to healing. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. My pleasure, my dear. And my website, Katie Beecher, is the easiest way to get me. So
awesome, woman. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my dear.
Love this episode of the Fearlessly Fertile podcast? Subscribe now and leave an awesome review. Remember, the desire in your heart to be a mom is there because it was meant for you. When it comes to your dreams, keep saying hell yes.